welcome to SI session October 17th. Who knows why I decided to start with that, since I haven't started with that any time before. But we'll see. So, I know you guys were assigned to certain readings and everything. Do you want to go into groups and talk to the people that have been assigned readings and talk about what you read about, or do you want to just go into our big discussion?
Well, I wasn't here Wednesday, so I didn't get assigned a certain particular reading to do, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, since it's just the few of us, how about we just start and talk about the study guide? So let me share the screen and we'll talk about the definitions that he has given us. So, who can tell me what broadcast media
is? Television, radio, or other media that transmit audio and or video content to the public.
Yep. So, basically, TV and radio.
Mm-hmm.
And what is a news aggregator?
An application or feed that collects web content such as news. Hold on, because my screen is split. News, headlines, blogs, podcasts, online videos, and more in one location for easy viewing.
So basically, it takes all of the news sources and stuff like that you want to look at and puts it all in one place for you to look at it. Like, for example, with Google, you can track certain issues, and it will give you articles that are related to those issues if they pop up. What is social media?
It's web and mobile-based technologies that are used to turn communication into interactive dialogue among organizations, communities, individuals. So it's just basically different ways of communicating that is not like face-to-face, like through blogs and podcasts, pictures, Facebook, etc., Twitter.
Yeah. So Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, all those things. They're ways of interacting with media socially. So that's social media. And what is agenda setting? I know Betty knows.
Agenda setting is the power of the media to bring public attention to particular issues and problems.
Yeah, and so Betty's comment for the day was related to agenda setting. And she said that she thinks that we're seeing an example of agenda setting because of the election. At least once a day, she sees something negative about Trump on the media. Do you agree that the media has an agenda to portray Trump in a negative light, or do you think that is an example of agenda setting?
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a example of agenda setting.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
I guess because they're trying to I guess because they're just trying to influence the public and just try to put their own opinion. I don't know how to explain it, but
yeah, I mean, Betty, do you want to follow up on her? Because you seem like you're nodding and agreeing with what Camille's saying.
Yeah, it's just something and so basically what I think of agenda setting is something that the media doesn't let go of. And Trump is already in the media and just because of his attitude. But I think now he's even more in the media just from when his video went out and media isn't letting that go. Mm-hmm. And so since it's attracting public attention. So even if like the women are lying or not lying, like it attracted those women to speak up. So I think that's a perfect example of agenda setting.
Definitely. All right. So now that we have the agenda setting all defined and everything, what's framing?
The power of the media to influence how events and issues are interpreted.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what would an example of that be?
I think like the proposition commercials right now, obviously if you're watching like a for, or even for the presidents, whatever, presidential candidates, if you're watching a commercial that's for them, they make them seem amazing. And then you see the ones that are against them and they just pull all the negative things. So just whatever you're more exposed to, I think you're actually going to start believing that and going with it and kind of ignoring the other side of the argument.
Yeah, and let's say with like the Michael Brown shooting case, was there a difference between what we saw in the broadcast media and what we saw in social media? You know, your head, Betty? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some circumstances, like mostly in a lot of things, sometimes having to do crime or something that has to do like with race or something that happened, there's always two sides to it. And so basically like we're gonna see something on social media where uncovers more of like what really happened. Whereas like for the news and stuff, either for like just public purposes where it's maybe too graphic or something, or just because they don't want the real truth out, or because depending of like what their point of view is, they kind of sugarcoat it or they cover up just for the better of the public or just for the better of themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Because especially if they have a certain political position that they want to maintain and keep stories that help that position. I'm going to show you guys a little comic that's kind of my favorite kind of comic that to describe media framing.
Mm-hmm.
So you see here what the screen is seeing is completely different than what's actually happening. So yeah, I think, I don't know if this thing is kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, another way to look at media framing. All right, and so let's first talk about R1. That was the article about the shootings and breaking news.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can somebody tell? So we have this little skeptic's guide right here, right? And that's kind of the synopsis of the article. Can somebody who read this explain what why we need to be aware of motives?
Sorry, I read it. I just don't remember.
It's okay, but why do you think so? What would a motive be in a breaking news story? Why would that be something that we want to look out for? Do you think let's say there was a school shooting like Sandy Hook, when all the new stuff came out? Do you think some people might have a motive when they're releasing this information, or do you think it was purely objective?
I think, does that like apply with like?
I think about if somebody is anti-gun law, like anti-guns. So,
Okay, so they might be using that situation as an example of why we shouldn't have guns available to people. Rather than reporting the story accurately, they'll just be doing whatever they can to support their own stance on the situation, kind of use it as support.
yeah, exactly. And then on the opposite side, if somebody was pro-gun, they might be like, oh, well, this person that got a hold of this gun was mentally unstable. It's not the gun's fault, it's the person's fault, kind of thing. And so those are some motives that we see when breaking news is happening. We don't have the full story. And what was the problem with multiple sources?
They have different stories.
Yeah, and actually, they actually tend to have the same story, but just little variations because all of the news places are getting the story from the same people.
Mm. And maybe just their point of view is different.
Yeah. Does anybody want to elaborate on that? Or do you think, what do you think might be a danger with multiple sources?
Is that like because if one person is the one, so if one person witnessed a crime or whatever and they're telling multiple different news channels about it and they're all reporting it, you're thinking that they got a bunch of different people's view on this when it's really just one person keeps restating the same exact thing. So if they didn't even see the event correctly or whatever, they're reporting it incorrectly, and it seems like all the news stations are agreeing with it, so it makes it more like valid even though it might still only be one person.
Yeah, and usually these sources are secondhand sources where they've heard the story and stuff like that. And then they also warn about primary sources. And why did they warn about the primary sources?
I think, is that where they mentioned that most of the people that are like saw it firsthand or whatnot, they actually don't want to come up forward because they don't want to talk about the event that took place. So really what ends up happening are these are primary sources that are like someone heard it from someone else, that's not a primary source.
Yeah, exactly. So basically people heard it from a witness who was a primary source, and they're like, oh, I want to be on TV, so I'm going to go tell a story and pretend I'm a primary source.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said, beware of killers' friends. Why would we want to be aware of those people? Let's say somebody came out, like, oh yeah, I knew this person in elementary school. They weren't like this, but I guess you really don't know a person.
Yeah, they use the example of the person currently that was 26 years old and someone like knew them from junior high, which that like portion of their life is irrelevant to this portion of their life. So if they were, a kind person back then, that has no impact on what they are, 10 years later. Like that's not a friend if they don't know them currently.
Yeah, exactly. And we often see people that just want to be on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like number 5, everyone gets the facts wrong, even the governor.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when these things happen, don't expect the most breaking news to be the most truthful, because everybody's just trying to get the facts so that they have more people watching their stories or buying their newspapers because they were the first ones who have the details and everything. It's more so, I would say, the day after and the next day is when you actually get accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad, but this is stuff that we have to know in America. Okay. And so we did Ginsburg, R1, and then are we on to Canada, what should we call it? The enduring debate? Yeah. Oh, and did you guys read the California reading really isn't like that pertinent, honestly. And if you haven't read it, you can kind of skip it. It's just kind of talking about how Californians get political information. All right, so let us move down to news versus entertainment, how increasing media choice widens gaps in political knowledge and turnout by Marcus Pryor. So who read this? Who was assigned this? Were you guys all assigned? Can you guys tell me what you guys were assigned on Wednesday? Because I forgot. Because remember we broke down the readings between you guys?
I think I was assigned this, but I don't remember, so I didn't read this one.
Okay. Well, did anybody read this article? No? Okay. So, you guys know what you're going to have to do tonight, then, when we get off of this. And I'm assuming nobody read the following article. All right. So, let us move on to R1, message machine behind TV analyst in Pentagon's hand. And so, did any of you read that article?
I read about 50% of it, and then I skimmed the rest because it was a long one.
Yeah, okay. Well, so the first point was talking about how the government got former generals and people, former military figures, to go talk onto talk shows. Why did they have them do this, and what was the effect?
Was it like because these are like trusted people, even though basically what ended up happening was they were like endorsed by the government, but they didn't let people know that they were, so people were trusting them even though the government was standing behind them telling them what to do.
And so what were these people doing?
Oh, I don't remember.
So they were going on to talk shows and they were giving their expert opinions and advice on what was going on with the war in Iraq and everything. And they were being paid by the government and to say good things about the war and to promote it, rather than to say, oh no, we shouldn't be in this war.
Is this the one where they were talking about how they have rehearsed questions and answers for the talk shows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so why did these guys do this?
I guess to give, from the government's perspective, they obviously want support for what's going on. You don't want your citizens to turn against you, especially if someone, a former veteran or something, is speaking out against it. It's kind of, you're going to like second guess it as a citizen. So they want these high officials to be supporting what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want another Vietnam situation where most of the youth is opposed to the war.
Right.
So why do you think these experts are giving these opinions and are being bribed, so to speak?
Maybe someone else wants to speak up.
I think it can be like their point of view, or they can just be, I don't know. So if, for example, if you're talking about someone in power, you really don't want to mess with them.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to stay away from that. You really don't want to, it's not like you don't want to get them you could, there's always in life where you can talk bad about someone even though you know it's right, but then you don't get backed up and you look like the bad person, like you're the liar.
Yeah, exactly. Because these former military people, they now have to find jobs in the private sector, and everybody's connected. I mean, networking is key. We all know this in any subfield that you're in. And so they have to go along with the status quo because if they want to continue having careers, which is just wrong. Because they should be able to say what they want. But as Betty said, we often, the good aren't allowed to speak on what they want to speak on. They have to follow the status quo so they can survive. And so let's move on to under Bush, a new age of prepackaged television news. What's prepackaged television news? If you didn't read the article, you can infer what this might be.
Is it basically what I just said, where it's already, they already thought of what they were going to say on the news and how to make the story look or appeal or whatever?
Yeah, but instead this way, this is actually stuff that is being broadcast, given to multiple stations, and being told, hey, okay, this is what we want you to say on this subject. Don't go outside the lines. And so they're like, okay, here, and here's the footage, here is the writing, here's everything. Frame it in the way that you want it to be framed.
And then it kind of we're talking about the Bush one, right?
Yeah.
The Bush. And then it got my attention, like in the beginning, how it was saying like, thank you Bush, thank you US, and like it would state like the first report said this, and the second report said this, and then you read a little more, and it talks about how like one thing managed all three reports.
Yeah. And I know further in this, it explains why these television networks actually have to rely on getting prepackaged news. And does anybody remember why that was? What are journalism jobs like in America?
If you don't write what they want you to write, they just don't publish your column anyways. So you kind of have to go with what your boss tells you to do, which oftentimes is going to be what the government wants to do.
But so if you guys know, do you think as far as the journalism job market goes, do you think television news and newspapers are hiring a lot of people nowadays?
No.
And so because they aren't hiring a lot of people, because less people are watching and less people are buying newspapers, and actually it really goes back to newspapers, because television news gets its stories from newspaper news, because newspaper news does in-depth research, and they use that. And so because there are less in-depth journalists in newspapers, there's less journalism in television, and so we have to rely on these prepackaged news to have something to put on air.
There was a line in the article that said, in most cases, the reporters are careful not to stay in the segment that they work for the government. That brought up a thing that I once I saw a movie, and it was about a journalist, and she the whole movie was based off of like that she had a source that basically that source said something that was like, it was huge, like it revealed a huge secret for like the government. This is a movie, but it was an example. And like the whole, like she got arrested, like tell me your source, and like as a journalist she sometimes you can't say your source.
So she wanted to keep her journalistic integrity.
He said no, like I'm not gonna say my source, and like she got thrown in jail for that, for the source, because like she's saying this true stuff, but she's not revealing the source, so the government doesn't like it. And at the end, it was something about, it had to do something like with the CIA, I believe. At the end, like it shows a clip, because this is like the audience, we didn't know who the source was. At the end, it shows that the source was the CIA's daughter. And so like that's really good. Like I kind of brought up like a light bulb, like, oh, I've seen something kind of like that. Like, it might be in the movie, but it might be like that in real life. They just don't reveal their sources sometimes, because it can really damage a reputation, or it can damage a lot of things.
Yeah, and actually, because in journalism there is kind of a code of honor where you don't, if a source asks to remain anonymous, you respect that, and that gives you ethos as a journalist. Back to, I know you guys were doing like ethos, pathos, and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so that's something that is brought up. Okay, so do you guys feel comfortable with that article and the content for that?
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on to the story behind the story by Mark Bowden. And what was this article about, just in general?
I kind of skimmed that one. I'm not gonna lie. That was probably the one I skimmed the most. But what I kind of skimmed and I got off of it was like, since like it was like two stories behind one thing. There was like two sides behind one thing, typical like what media is.
Yeah, so whatchamacallit?
It had to do with like the Sonia Sotomayor, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. So Obama appointed Judge Sotomayor to be the next Supreme Court justice and everything, and so apparently a couple days before the nomination, two videos that made her look very bad were released. One making her look like she thinks that judges make policy, and another implying that her that she as a Latina woman is going to make better judicial decisions than a white man would. And both of these videos were taken out of context. And the source of these videos was somebody who purposely was looking for a big story, something that would make the liberals look bad, because it was done by an independent conservative researcher, like journalist kind of thing, and so this post-journalistic term that the author uses in the article, and he also says is synonymous with adversarial journalism, is the type of journalism where you are looking to find something bad, it's just something to make the other side look bad. And because they're your adversaries, so you're being adversarial with your journalism, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so this seems to be the trend in, especially with bloggers. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen where some people on Twitter, if like I know like some dude has said like some really racist stuff, and so they find out where he works and they find his phone number and stuff like that, and they post it publicly. I would say that's another form of adversarial journalism in some ways, because you're like, oh, I got my receipts on this person, here they are, rather than actually researching a story, if that makes sense.
What is it? Adversarial. Sorry, I can't say adversarial.
Yeah. Here, I just highlighted it.
Adversarial journalism. So basically, getting something in a dirty way.
Yeah.
Like not like not like a source. Like you found it. either like maybe by mistake or you were looking deep into it to find that something. Just so I would say kind of like what Trump is going through right now, because I'm sure someone had to be digging deep for those videos, or someone just had those videos and all of a sudden revealed them.
Yeah. But I would say that it's similar, but in other ways it's different because we were given the full video in full context.
Okay.
Rather than something
Just
out
like,
of context.
Okay, so it would be more advert journalism
Yeah.
if they just basically put it like in writing.
So more so if like they just took a clip of like the one sentence that he said, just the I grabbed by the pussy because I'm famous.
Okay. Also, maybe like, for example, a shooting, when they only show a clip of something that basically kind of just benefits one party.
Yeah. I would suggest reading the article. It's actually really short. I read it right before this.
Okay.
Before we started class, just to remind myself and everything. But it's a good article.
I was just confused on why they were bashing on her if it said that she was appointed to the bench by a Republican president and then Obama chose her. So obviously a Republican and a Democrat both agreed on her. So why were they so against her is what I don't get.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure actually Obama was the one who appointed her, and then but it was passed by a Democratic Congress, but let me check.
It says it's like in the fourth paragraph, it says, here's this purportedly moderate Latina judge appointed to the federal bench by a Republican president. That's why, and then as I was reading, I was like, then why are they trying to find wrong in her if obviously a Republican president found something good in her? That's why I was
I'm trying to, so fourth paragraph, does it start with or?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Check on the third one.
Okay, yeah. So what that means was that she was appointed to the federal court system, not the Supreme Court system. There's actually a difference in levels. And so, yeah, and it does make sense that, but so that also shows the polarity of our American politics.
Okay.
That, she was approved by a Republican president at one point, but now she's being approved by a Democratic president. No, she's bad.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's because they're children and they think that they need to, that picking over sides and stuff like that is what's going to progress things, even though actually working together would be the most beneficial thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's American politics.
You think, hold on, let me unmute myself. Do you think maybe her, I thought I was muted. Do you think her gender maybe had something to do with it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because like when it said that Obama, let me get to the article, Obama had chosen a woman, like why did they why did they bring up the woman part?
Yeah, and that's definitely another thing and stuff like that. But of course, the people that were digging up dirt on her aren't going to explicitly say that they didn't like her because she was a woman and stuff like that. But no, and we're going to be seeing all of this nonsense going on with the next president and who they try to appoint to the Supreme Court.
And then this one upcoming, sorry to interrupt, this upcoming one's probably going to appoint multiple, the whole statistics. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine then?
Yeah, no, it's looking up to 3 judges.
Yeah.
That's getting real close to the majority.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's gonna be important.
I was reading this article, there's always conspiracies. Um,
Oh, do you want to hear what my dad's conspiracy about the election
go
is?
for it. Go for it.
He thinks, well, he says that Trump has been a friend of the Clintons for many, many years, and that he's actually just running to ensure Hillary's win.
Yes, yes, it's the same one, and that Hillary's gonna win, and she's the one that's gonna appoint all of them, and then she's gonna do whatever the hell she wants.
Yeah, and I mean, the timing of the video does make things seem a little suspicious, I have to admit, but
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, because he acts like an idiot. Like sometimes I can't believe the stuff he
I
does.
mean, you think he's like trying to deliberately lose the election, but like his supporters are just like clinging on and are just like, no, he will be president.
I know. I'm just like seriously, guy. Like, come on.
Where'd you hear this from?
I was reading an article.
Where was it on?
It was on Facebook. I never believe stuff that Facebook says besides like it's actual like ABC or Fox, some credibility. It was like a random like thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, who knows?
But with the things he says, sometimes it honestly does look a little bit believable. I'm not gonna lie, because sometimes you're really thinking like, is he trying to lose the election on purpose? I don't know.
Yeah.
He acts like an animal. Like I understand like you whatever if he supposedly really does hate Clinton. When they debate like Clinton probably hates his guts as well, but she stays composed and like she just she's probably like dying inside. She probably wants to chop his head off, but like
Oh yeah.
she's like she stays cool. She responds to the questions she has to respond, and she just sits there. Or this guy interrupts everyone, and he's just.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he's just an asshole to the people that ask him questions. Like he always has something to say. He's like that annoying like other person. Like, God.
He's like the annoying kid in class who just has to say has to backtalk to the teacher and stuff like that with everything.
Has to have the last word.
Yeah, and like he's not saying anything of substance.
God, and that's what really frustrates me when he starts like telling stuff to the people that are asking these questions. It's like, dude, they have nothing to do with you. They're asking you questions basically that are written to be asked. It's not like something that they ask. I'm pretty sure they rehearse as well. Like you just let it go and answer the question, but no, here he goes.
And then actually, so what did you guys think of him already saying that elections and the polls are being rigged?
I'm writing my thing like that.
Or
I'm writing my thing like that. Well, if this conspiracy is true, then maybe he does have evidence. But I don't know.
yeah, but honestly, from kind of an international relations perspective and everything, what makes democratic governments successful is peaceful transitions of power. And for him to already say, hey, I think the elections are rigged, he's already challenging the outcome of the elections.
Yeah.
And
like,
yeah, and that's already that kind of challenges the transition.
I'm reading my article. I have to still write it, but I was skimming it before I left to my class. It's an article on the LA Times discussing that subject. It stated like, he already like that guy, is it Paul? I think his name Paul, the one that is not gonna like stand by him anymore because of the points ago about the women, but he's still gonna vote for him. Like basically was saying like, dude, you already have someone like Paul, whatever, with some type of power, like not standing by you. Like what is this gonna do to the people that are trying to make the elections as fair as they can? Like you're basically throwing them in your face and saying you guys freaking suck. Like you doubting basically like what they're doing. And it's like you're doubting our credibility. And like, I think if I was to come into that concept where I would just like be based on basically not critical thinking, like if I was to go based on like what I would specifically see in the media and like if my dislike for Trump, I would say like he's just saying this because he's trying to bring something out to cover up his whole thing, all his scandal with women.
Yeah.
If that was me, but who knows me? It could be rigged. I don't even know, but like it's not rigged or not. You shouldn't be saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Like these people are trying to actually put you in office or not put you in office. That's how you win or lose. Like you can't just go bashing on the people that are trying to make it as fair as they can. If assuming that it's fair.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Al Gore, who had the whole like election scandal in 2000, you guys remember that with Florida and everything?
Yeah.
Even when he got the Supreme Court decision, he was like, I don't agree with it, but I accept it.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to do for things to actually go smoothly and not decide into civil war. So,
This man.
but I don't see that happening because I think the people that support Trump are too attached to the status quo to go full on rebellion. So that's just another little side note. But let's go back to the media in our last 5 minutes of class. So do you guys feel okay? And so, media concentration. I wanted to talk about that, and Camille asked about that. Awesome. Okay. So, what is media concentration? Does anybody know? What do you think it might be? Just give a guess.
Something that the media specifically focus on.
Actually, it is a concentration of where you get your news source. So let's say you only get your news.
Oh, gotcha.
That is your media concentration. And so if your media is concentrated and you're not getting it from a diverse range of sources, why might that be a problem?
Because just like the polls, if you're people that are going into these polls and putting their opinion are basically just Republican, you're only gonna get one side. So if you're reading something like that's only like a Republican newspaper, you're only gonna hear the Republican side.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not gonna hear you're only gonna be exposed to certain stories. You're not gonna be exposed to a full gamut of stories because of the concentration.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something, and also you're only seeing what you want to see,
Yeah.
what you want to read about. It's not, you don't get a diverse range of stories as if you would if you get like, let's say a national newspaper like the New York Times or something. You're gonna see more stories that you would see from other places rather than if you just saw from one particular source, if that makes sense. So you get more stories and more news from New York Times than you would from Fox News website.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew. Sorry, to interrupt. We always seem to like collide at the same time.
Yeah.
I never knew. Like, I eventually found this out probably like my freshman year that like there's actual newspapers that are like one-sided. I never knew that. Like, I never knew that like Fox was more hitting to one side, and I'm just like, oh crap. Like, if you think about it, yeah.
Yeah, because you think, news, it should be objective, right?
Yeah.
No. It's, especially with cable news, that's, and being on cable is what let it be subjective and have a bias and everything because it wasn't a general news source for people to go to, even though those sources do have their own biases. because of
Yeah.
the companies that own them. I would
Yeah.
I would suggest to you guys to look up who owns ABC and who owns like the major four like common news channels, and you'll see that they aren't owned by many different people. So you get the same stuff. Do you guys you want so politicians and interest groups, how do they attempt to shape the news?
Well, like right now, that's all we see.
How do they do it though?
Because like for example, if you're talking about a Republican, like the other day I was at work and I was on my break and they had casually had a news station on, and all they talked about were bashing on Hillary.
And so would prepackaged news be a tool of politicians or interest groups to attempt to shape the news?
Yeah.
And what about framing?
I'm sorry?
What about framing?
That too. That could be. It's framing and agenda setting.
Yeah, and then what about the commercials that are being paid for that you keep seeing, like the propositions, Angelina? Is that shifting news?
Of course. I mean, especially with interest groups, they tend to have money. It's a collection of people with the same views, so they're going to put their money into what they all support. So they're going to make, like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of one proposition right now, like the death penalty. So, like, trying to get rid of it. So, obviously, if you're, like, for getting rid of it, you're going to be, like, saying, like, this is horrible morally, blah, 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 blah. And you're going to start pouring all your money in. And if that's all you're saying, you're going to start agreeing with that.
Definitely. And real quick, what do you guys think of, I don't know, Americans only getting their news from, like, let's say the internet?
It's a super small portion of the actual news, and we are very lazy and we don't do our own research, so whatever we're fed, we'll take it. And I mean, I'm guilty of this too. And like, I'll run, if there was like some big thing, I'll go to my mom and be like, did you hear about that? And it's like totally not accurate. The next day I realize I totally told her something wrong, but that's what the media told me because
Yeah.
it's really easy to do my own research.
Unless we're like news hounds where we have our Twitter feed is just a bunch of different news sources. We have like
Yeah.
MSNBC, the news going on the TV, and then like we have like our newspaper out too.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not be credible. They can be a random, like on Facebook, there's a whole bunch of them. There's like a random as websites.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's why you guys always check where you're getting your information from.
Yeah.
Always, always. Well, it is 6:52. Do you guys have any other questions that you want to go over, or do you want to stop?
I think it's very redundant, you know. The media is very redundant.
So,
Oh, I have a question. So it's not related, but my insight is due tomorrow. So do I email? Do I send it to you and Professor Friedman?
Yep.
Okay, by 9 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, girls. I shall see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.